Hello, welcome to Free Will, Science, and Religion. I'm Chandler Klebs, and I'm here with Jamie Soden, George Ortega, and WSD.
Yeah.
Yeah, he always goes, yeah. Yeah, and now Jamie wanted to talk about libertarianism and about like the political philosophy, but like Jamie, you were saying that it's also heavily related to the free will belief, even though it's not necessarily the same as free will libertarianism in philosophy. It's still heavily based on blaming people and assuming they have free will. So
Yeah,
maybe
because
you could explain that.
oftentimes they would say that people choose to be poor, and uh, they don't believe that the state should have any role in protecting the disadvantaged and the vulnerable.
Yeah. Um,
George, can you go into detail about this? Because you're more well clued up on this than I am.
Well, I mean, basically, what I know of libertarianism is simply that, yeah, in a certain sense, it leans toward anarchy. They don't want the government, they don't want society to limit freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of action. They're basically for no laws to a great extent, no regulation in the economy. Um, and I guess what they have in common with conservatives is that, yeah, I guess, according to what you said before, that they tend to blame the poor for being the poor, for being poor, and you can't do that, without invoking free will, the belief in free will.
Yeah, because without the state having a role in regulating things, you're always going to have pollution and deforestation, animal cruelty, and just exploitation of the working class, like what goes on with workers in Asia and India. They're making electronic goods and clothes for very big industries that make billions and billions of dollars. And the people that are in these poorer countries are getting uh, they're getting treated so terrible. Their pay is like very bad. Like in the Foxconn factory, I think according to the Google search, their pay rate is 1.5 um, dollars, no 1.50 dollars an hour. So it's quite a low standard of living, isn't it, George?
And yeah, and then here's the thing.
Hmm.
When people refer to like the state,
Mm.
I mean, it's really the people, we the people, and in a democracy, we are supposed to be governing ourselves, each other.
Hmm.
But the only reason that doesn't happen is because the rich have taken over. The rich with these, they basically inject all this money into politics, and they've hijacked our democracy. But libertarians, in other words, like, the only alternative to we the people governing ourselves through our government, because that's what government is that businesses then decide what happens and what doesn't happen. In other words, like a business, um, if a business is not regulated, right,
Hmm.
then they can do whatever they want. They can lie to customers. They just, these regulations, these rules and laws that we, the people, create are for the benefit of all, for the protection of all, where businesses are just, they're interested in themselves, and a lot, unfortunately, a lot of libertarians are. That's why they're libertarians. They want to just like have, businesses have more power to do what they, want. And as we saw in 2008, when that happens, we have economic crashes because, like, they're just irresponsible.
Yeah, and then they tend to blame the poor for the economic meltdown by saying there's too many people on food stamps or whatnot. But the thing is with the national spending, from what I've researched, is that Social Security or food stamps, whatever, is only 3% of the national budget, while 54% of the national budget is being spent on military. So I don't understand what's going on, George. So
Oh yeah, and if you heard the news today, like, Trump who's a billionaire, hasn't paid federal taxes in like 18 years.
Oh yeah,
I
I
mean,
heard
come
about that.
on. So
Like I
like,
said, you and me would have done that. We've been under the jail. But yeah,
Yeah, if it was any ordinary person not paying their taxes, yeah, like WSD said, they would have been thrown in jail. But because of these privileged people who have such high positions, they can afford legal representation to work their way around the laws.
but I still think they should have been in jail because you did wrong.
Yeah,
oh yeah, I hope
yeah, I
after the election they put Trump in prison. You know,
I
he
Yeah,
should be
agree.
there
yeah,
for like
guys,
10
here's the thing
years.
that I have to wonder. Like, yeah, like how is it that these billionaires, they somehow don't pay taxes? And I know how in the world they do that because for example, my taxes are taken out before I get my net pay. It's just automatically taken out. So how does somebody not pay taxes?
Well, Chandler, like for example, in real estate, real estate as a business has pumped so much money into politics that you have real estate people creating the tax law for the field, and they bribe politicians. They just get these loopholes in, loopholes that not everybody can use. Like who
Laws
doesn't
may
pay taxes? So
Yeah, that's very interesting because yeah, I find it so strange that like there are billionaires that don't pay taxes, but then there are all these poor people who are still paying taxes on whatever money they do make. And I mean I don't know. I mean, I feel like a lot of people can agree that there's something wrong with that picture.
well, and that's why this election is so important because, like, the next president is going to like appoint the next Supreme Court justice to replace Scalia, and you got to understand, like, for the last 45 years, the Supreme Court has been in the hands of Republicans, and the Republican Party is really the army of libertarians and conservatives and big money corporations. So in other words, like with the Supreme Court, basically we can reverse that. Like basically the idea behind democracy is one person, one vote, right? That's the ideal. But conservatives and libertarians also, because they want hands off, they don't want anything regulated. They've championed, well, $1, one vote. That the more money you have, the more political power you have a right to, and that's just like so wrong. It's so unethical.
yeah.
And the Supreme Court can change that. The Supreme Court can say, no, this is a democracy for, by, and for the people. And if you have more money, fine, you can buy more cars if you want, but you can't buy our politicians.
Yeah, it's the corruption of the legal system that's
Hmm.
at issue here, George. The laws that the Senate has put through because of corporations using lobbyists for what has been happening.
Right, and then again, the problem with libertarians is they're against so much of the kind of regulation that we need to compel people to do the right thing.
Like
Because
carbon
without,
tax, for example, because climate change is a very serious problem, and climate change deniers don't seem to um, understand the gravity of the situation. When we lose um, a lot of our animal species, that also affects our food supply too. Yeah,
yeah, another thing with libertarians, it's kind of like they confuse people about this notion of freedom.
yeah,
In other words, like they champion freedom, which is like freedom from laws, freedom from rules, and people like, I mean, like it's not just libertarians, conservatives do this. A lot of people like, but the problem with championing freedom, because I sure when you think about it, sure, freedom is a good thing. Freedom from oppression is certainly a good thing. Freedom to self-govern is a good thing. But the problem for us with this free will thing is that, like, a lot of times when you're championing freedom in this general political way, it'll confuse people. They'll say, "Oh yeah, freedom is good." So then when you ask them, "Do you have a free will?" They'll say yes, because they think like to not have a free will is like, is is just wrong or undesirable. They don't see that they can't get past their view of freedom to see the harm that belief in free will does.
Yeah,
It's interesting, George, because they do conflate it. They conflate different senses of the word freedom, and that's where so much confusion is caused. Because, and like we've had to explain before, since this is the Free Will Science Religion show, we explain that political freedom or lack thereof is not the same as a free will, and that's something that people have to understand. Because unfortunately, lay people don't understand that.
yeah. Because the problem with libertarians and conservatives is that sometimes they argue that we shouldn't have a minimum wage to protect the working class, and then go back to, or just have a system like in China or India where they have no minimum wage legislation at all, and as a result, the workers are paid so poorly that they can't afford their own houses. They have to live in the factories and work, all their lives there. It's a dead end job. They don't really improve their situation. Most of them, they're just prisoners, basically. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like isn't like for example, having a minimum wage, that is a law that say restricts the freedom of a company to pay its workers as little or no money. It's any every law that by any government that I
But
can
it's all
think
for the
of.
greater good, though, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, see that's the thing is people they want to be able to be paid a living wage, but then see if they go full libertarian, if they say no state intervention, well that means that there's no minimum wage either. You
yeah,
know.
some libertarians are so crazy that they actually believe that people would choose to work for less than the minimum wage.
Yeah, like I said, just as I said before, y'all take away minimum wage. Guess what? I'm gonna go ham. I ain't working. I ain't doing. I ain't following the rules no more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty.
That's what's gonna happen.
I mean, I suppose the workers in China who are in these factories for such pitiful wages, they probably have the option to go into prostitution or stuff like that. But one, it might not get them that much more money, and second, it's still not voluntary because it's not something that they would normally want to do, George.
Yeah,
I,
that's a good point. And like Jamie, I'd like to point out that
Yeah,
nothing we do is truly voluntary in the sense that it's all something we have to do for our survival in one sense or another, it seems.
necessity. Yeah, I mean, work itself is done out of necessity because people realize, one, without work ethics, society would just fall apart, and second, you're doing it to earn a paycheck so you can have your food and pay your bills and whatnot.
Yeah, that's the
the
thing is that people don't realize it's all bound by seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. It's all about survival, pretty much.
Exactly.
the problem with libertarianism is that it's immoral, and I say that quite literally. In other words, like in order to protect and defend morality, to use morality as a tool to make the world better, you have to have rules and laws. Because now who knows? Maybe 1,000 years from now you won't have to because people will just automatically know to do the right thing. But we haven't gotten that far. So like when libertarians say no, like let's not have laws, let's have as few rules and laws as possible, they are essentially saying, well, no, it really just doesn't matter whether people commit crimes or people are ethical or people behave morally. And it's a very naive but also very destructive philosophy. Now fine, there's a principle in government. I think the government who governs least governs best. In a certain sense, yeah, we want, to just like, for example, we want freedom of speech. We don't want the government telling us we can't say a certain word or say a certain thought. So some of these things
But we
make
don't want the
sense.
government taking our personal positions. Like,
Right.
yeah,
But and that, for example, if you ask a libertarian, all right, so do you want to extend this libertarian philosophy to theft and robbery? So like you're walking down the street and somebody can rob your house or something. Then they'll say, oh no, we need those kinds of laws. So I think a lot of times libertarians, are against laws that constrain them but there are 4 laws that protect them. So,
But
you
when,
know, it's kind of like, you
Yeah,
know,
they're cherry picking.
but when it comes to economics, George, when it comes to money and stuff like that, it's a bit more complicated. They need to realize this. I mean, I always value security more than freedom because you need uh, you need protection of the police against someone who's going to kill you. You know what I mean?
right. And I don't think libertarians would be against that because basically they want that protection, but they don't want to offer that protection to, let's say, the poor. You know, they don't want the poor to be protected against the rich or against greed.
And they don't want Social Security to protect the elderly, disabled, and um,
Exactly.
yeah.
They're basically just indifferent, immature people that you know, it's a very naive, self-serving philosophy.
I totally agree with you there, George. But the problem is, there's a lot of these people, and they need to be exposed for the frauds that they are. Yeah.
Absolutely. Look at, like, for example, Trump. You know, he's proud of not paying taxes. You know, he's proud of getting around the law. You know, so I mean, like, you know, you should think that a billionaire would want to pay taxes because he can afford them. He could, like, you know, it's not going to like make a difference to his lifestyle. For somebody to be so selfish, so greedy, as to be so rich and use these loopholes, these and I hope what happens, you know, because of what Trump did, I hope that they end up closing that loophole so these real estate people, you know, start having to pay their taxes. But you know, that's part of the libertarian philosophy. Don't tax me. You know, the government doesn't have the right to tax people. That's absurd.
Yeah. I mean, to a point. I mean, yes, taxation can get excessive, and what I mean by that is you shouldn't tax people more than what's necessary to run your legal system, your prisons, your hospitals, your education, and safety nets. You shouldn't tax them more than what's needed to, you know, keep people safe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this also relates to, for example, punishments for crimes, because, like, you know, because we don't have a free will,
Yeah.
you know, we are compelled to respond to reward and punishment. In other words, like, we're programmed to seek pleasure and avoid pain. So that means when there is a certain punishment, let's say for a certain crime, that's going to deter us. But the problem is, just like how a lot of rich people don't pay taxes. You know, let's say you have a $1 billion corporation that that if they abuse their power and, let's say, they, I don't know, they sell a product that harms people, right? They might be, you know, fined, or they might be taken to court, and their penalty might be $100,000 or $1 million, right? And so, like, you know, the idea is, like, to an average person, that's like, you know, an average person harming someone, and the penalty or fine is, you know, 10 cents or 50 cents. So it's such a little amount. So the rich don't have an incentive to abide by the law because the penalties are so low. What they should do, which is, this is the exact opposite of libertarianism, is like, if you're, let's say, a middle class person, and let's say you get a speeding ticket, right? Speeding ticket for a middle class person, let's say it's $100, right?
Yeah.
That's enough an inducement. If you're a really rich person, let's say you're you know, you earn $2 million a year, then that speeding ticket should be $50,000, or, you know, something enough to deter it, because otherwise the
It's
rich
actually
could care less.
500. It's actually 500 if you have a CDL.
All right, but you get my
But
point
you
that,
see,
like,
yeah.
yeah, the rich, you know, penalties for crimes should be proportional, especially when they're financial penalties. They should be proportional to the income and wealth of the person who's committing the crime, because that's the only way you can stop these white collar criminals, these corporations, from just flouting the law, because they can just, you know, like Trump, he just, like, he bought off this this a politician in Florida. He paid I think a $21,000 fine, and, you know, that fine should have been like $50 million.
But we also need more regulations to help tackle climate change because, as we've discussed many times over, George, it's a very serious problem. and people need to start making changes like renewable energy. We need more of this, dude. We can't keep burning fossil fuels and cutting down trees because the concentration of like carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is going to get to the point where it's just
Yeah, that's when we hit the wall 130 miles an hour. I already hit at 30, right at 130.
yeah. Well, what's going to happen is the
Yeah,
ocean's going to be bleached. Um, the the carbon dioxide is going to acidify the oceans, George. You know what I mean? You've researched this, didn't you? Like,
Yeah, no, I mean, like you're so right. In other words, like climate change is the strongest argument against libertarianism. I mean, what the danger that our civilization faces is so grave, the consequences so serious, so devastating that, we may have to give up a lot of our freedoms. Like for example, the freedom to turn up your thermostat, your heat to 78 or something. Like we may have to give up a lot of freedoms, to save our civilization. And that's, it's a necessary, it's kind of like a necessary evil in a way, because we don't want to give up our freedoms, but like in order for the best good, for the greatest good, we may have to.
yeah, because climate change is going to result in very serious consequences for the future generations. Uh, if if it's not slowed down, we need to go to renewable energy as soon as possible, George. And I don't know how to do it, to be honest. But carbon taxes would be a way to deter people from using fossil fuels, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I mean, the way to tackle climate change is to get money out of politics. For example, ExxonMobil and the oil industry and the car manufacturers, these are all conspiring to lie to people, to tell people, oh, no, climate change isn't happening. No, it's not really that serious. No, we're not causing it. They confuse people, and then they cause, people to not want to address it. And the only way we have any chance of addressing it is to get money out of the politics. So these people, these corporations, or another thing would be to make that kind of misinformation illegal. In other words, like, you know, it's illegal for a cigarette manufacturer to say that smoking cigarettes is safe. I mean, they have to actually have that warning on every pack of cigarettes, warning this causes cancer, does whatever. I mean, it should be illegal for newspapers, for corporations, even for politicians to say that climate change isn't happening or that it's not serious.
Yeah, I mean, I heard Donald Trump uh, claim another pseudoscience a while back. He claimed that the measles vaccine caused autism in babies, didn't he? Apparently.
Yeah, I mean, Trump he's amazingly stupid. He really is. I guess his success is like he's good at conning people.
Yeah, I've always said this, right? I've said in the past, even if it does cause autism, it's still better than dying, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, vaccines. My understanding is like, this guy Chris Mooney wrote a book called The Republican Brain,
Mm.
and it's how, like, for example, people vote not based on what the facts are, but based on what their ideology is, what they need to believe. So one of the things he said was that Republicans will deny climate change, just not looking at the evidence, just looking, they can't believe that we could be doing something so horrible. And interestingly, Democrats are really more against vaccines. Apparently, like from what Chris Mooney said, he said really there's no evidence, or at least strong evidence, I guess, that these vaccines are harmful, but there's been some kind of like crusade against them. So
There's been some
uh,
conspiracies against, vaccines being done, yeah, like
right, right.
with the right wing claiming that, vaccines cause autism, which is completely not true. And I said, like I said, even if it were true, it's still better than killing babies. You know what I mean? Uh, if you deny them the vaccine, they're gonna die, obviously.
Exactly. It's like the lesser of two evils. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think, based on that rationale, it's completely stupid of people like Trump and right-wing tabloids to deny vaccines on the basis of, oh, it will cause some kind of mental development disorder.
I hear you.
It's just the logic just doesn't add up. I'd rather have someone alive than dead. Well, it depends on how much suffering they go through. Like for the terminally ill who request, you know, suicide. I suppose. I mean, you kind of understand why they want to leave the world, like those sort of people. But that's a different topic. Assisted suicide. It's nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Yeah, some of these topics will get us a little bit too off topic of the main point, but
Yeah, this is irrelevant. So let's just stop that. Yeah.
but
Sorry.
yeah. But like I think what George was saying earlier, like you said, I think George, you said it was illegal to tell people that it's safe to smoke cigarettes.
Well, it's illegal to for a cigarette manufacturer, let's say, to advertise and say, well, no, these cigarettes are completely safe. They're not harmful. That's illegal. In fact, they have to on every pack of cigarettes, they have to put, what the harm might be.
Yeah, which is interesting, George, because this leads to the idea that it could become illegal for people to lie to the public about all kinds of things.
It should be. It absolutely should be. Fox News, they lie to the people every day, because they're not really a news organization. They call themselves entertainment. It should be illegal for newspapers, for television shows, for these corporations. They're actually corporations. They're making hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe billions of dollars. It should be illegal for them to lie. The fact that they can get away with it is insane.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
especially when
that's the
it's
thing.
pseudoscience. Pseudoscience is a real problem in this world. It's causing misery, isn't it, George? Like you said that Milton Friedman was stupid in his economic theories.
Yeah, they're so ideological and nonsensical. Like this trickle down stuff. Evidence. Decades of evidence. It doesn't happen. He's championing it. Yeah, it's like it's like I don't know if he's stupid or criminal. He's just he's like Trump. I mean, so vile.
Yeah, I mean his policies. The only kind of people that his policies would benefit are those who are already at the top.
Well, here's something I want to mention, guys. Now, while I know that people have a tendency to value freedom of speech, but I tend to agree with George, like, it should be illegal to lie. Because you guys know how I am committed to honesty, sometimes to more of an extreme than all you guys combined, I'm sure, where I don't think anyone should lie, not even to save a life. So I don't think people should be allowed to lie. There needs to be, like, they should be kicked out of political office or go to jail for lying, you know? But
Well, if they're spreading pseudoscience, then they should be banned from politics, in my opinion.
yeah, see, it's interesting because like that I tend to agree, but at the same time, there's also the trouble that this can lead to a certain type of thing where somebody could actually be telling the truth but be accused of lying because others don't believe of them, and then punished for telling the truth and accused of lying. So that's another tricky part of it.
I believe, it may be a really difficult task, but it's probably much easier than addressing climate change. But I believe it's probably possible for people, for engineers, computer people to create a 100% accurate lie detector test. You know, Measuring a person's voice, looking at the person's eye movements, hooking them up to an MRI or an EEG, all these different kinds of physiological measures that, can determine really 100% accuracy whether a person's lying or not. Once that happens, then game over for all this deceit.
Mm. It may happen one day, but at the moment, our lie detectors are not. They're not concrete at the moment. That's what.
Actually, but you want to know something, Jamie? I mean, the average lie detector in the hands of a professional has an accuracy of maybe 80 to 90%, right? Now, the average judge, the average police officer, people who are trained in this,
Hmm.
their effectiveness in detecting a lie is about 50%. So, these lie detectors are, they're pretty sophisticated. They're better at this than we are.
Now here's
Yeah,
a question,
I still,
guys.
I
Um,
still think videotape and DNA evidence is a lot more foolproof.
Well,
Well, yeah, I mean,
but
sure.
here's a question, guys. How do you distinguish between people who are knowingly lying to people, or who are giving false information but sincerely believe what they're saying?
That's what I'm saying. I have a feeling like before you lie to someone else, you know, and it's not like sometimes you have to lie to yourself, you know, and then you can lie to people. And I have a feeling you could develop technology that'll even detect when a person's lying to themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would hope so.
It also depends on the severity of a lie, in my opinion. Like, I think whether or not um, a politician should be punished for, um, deceiving the public, it should squarely depend on the severity of a deceit and what it's about and why they're doing it. Because if they're doing it to defend rich people, then obviously it's a very severe thing, right?
Absolutely. Like any crime, you know, it should be like the penalty should be determined by the amount of harm it does or potentially does. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, for example, taking away the minimum wage on um, the claim that it will somehow make people better off overall, which is what people like Milton Friedman spread for.
Mm,
You know,
yep. And I tell you what will happen if you do that.
yeah,
I
more
All
said
right.
it
So
earlier.
but you know, pulling this back to the free will thing, um, and you know, this is a kind of like a question without an answer. But you know, we all know that nobody has a free will. So these libertarians, these people that are lying about climate change, you know, conservatives and all, it's not up to them. It's not that they're doing it. So like whatever's controlling the show, you know, is just like, you know, I mean, does some good things, right? There is a lot of good in the world, and I think hopefully, I think there's more good than evil. But you know, it's unexplainable how like whatever is creating everything just makes so many people do so much evil.
yeah, we're still living in a world with a lot of ignorant people, though, like people who are pro-establishment. Like I was saying, the economist Milton Friedman has indoctrinated so many people into believing this crap, like taking away safety nets and minimum wage, and these people do tend to blame people for being poor. They claim that people choose to be poor, or claim that somehow working for a crappy job is voluntary. I mean, how the hell is that voluntary? Why would anyone willingly?
Yeah, Jamie, that's why work is so important. You know, when society gets our message, when they understand what we're saying and why we're saying it,
Mm,
then you know these libertarians are not going to have a ground for blaming the poor or for blaming anyone. They're just like, you know, the foundation to their greed and selfishness is going to be like pulled up from under them.
yeah, because I want an economic system that favors everyone rather than just a few.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
that's one of the reasons why me and WSD like the Venus Project, because if we get rid of money, then we will end a lot of problems with that.
yeah, yeah. The only thing is, how in the world do we get things changed? Because it seems so hard to change anything. It seems like the way society is structured is where anything new is quickly eliminated.
Well, Chandler, it's all about politics. I mean, basically, the Republicans are for maintaining the status quo. The Democrats generally are for changing things, but the problem there is even that like now elections have gotten so expensive. Like to run for the Senate costs millions of dollars. So even among Democrats, there are people that are very rich that are like our senators and all, and that creates a problem. But like the only hope we have is like, for example, if Hillary or whoever comes after her is courageous enough and wise enough to get the money out of out of politics. When Sanders, you know, Sanders was so popular with millennials, with young people, because he was saying that every day. He went around the country, you know, pointing to that. He understood what's the cause of all our problems, you know, and he understood how to fix it. Once we get money out of politics, then all of a sudden it's not greed and selfishness that's guiding our decisions. It's reason, and it's like, our collective interest. So, like, for example, you know, all right, God willing, Clinton, Hillary gets elected in November. She appoints either Garland or another, you know, uh, judge that will reverse Citizens United versus FEC, that will reverse all these like Republican decisions, with the Republican court that give power to rich people. So once the rich people are without power, you can't have. Then they'll create laws that will like prevent organizations like Fox News from lying to people. So,
Yep.
but it all starts with getting money out of politics.
Yeah. But these are the type of people that are stopping this universal basic income from getting put in as well,
They're
because
stopping everything. Yeah, I mean, they're
Hmm.
stopping that. They're stopping a fair society. They're stopping efforts on climate change. Any problem, in other words, like the rich of this world are far more dangerous as a group than every terrorist organization combined. The
or every
evil.
criminal gang that you can
Oh
think.
yeah, God, yeah. These rich people, and then the problem is that they have a lot of public relations firms, and that they present themselves to the world as such good people, but no, they're more dangerous. They're a more dangerous group than has ever existed on the planet.
Yeah, not all rich people are doing bad things. It's just the ones that are contributing to climate change and the suffering of the poor. They're the problem.
In the name of profit. Yeah.
Right, but a lot of rich people, let's say, who aren't part of the problem, aren't enough part of the solution. In other words, sometimes with police forces,
Yeah.
you have police lying, for other police to protect other police people, right? Or you have like police people who see stuff that's going on that's wrong and remain silent. So a lot of rich people find they may not be, so horrible and all, but they play along to get along. They just like they don't say anything when they should.
Yeah, they're not honest about their feelings a lot of the time. I see what you mean there. I was gonna say, yeah, this climate change thing. How we're gonna get more people to stop denying this? Because um, there was a study done, weren't there, WSD? Like 1 in 4 land species were supposed to be gone by uh, 2050, weren't it, George?
Yep.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, that's wow.
Something like that. Or well, some video that says something about that. Can't remember which one.
In the past I've proposed that lying about climate change be as illegal as lying about cigarettes or anything else.
Yeah, I mean, no one of sound mind or any scientific knowledge could honestly say that cigarettes were good
I
for
mean,
anyone.
you can't, any one of us, if we're in court, right, testifying, we don't even have to be on trial. If we're a witness or something, it's illegal to lie in court about anything.
Mm,
But this standard isn't being applied to climate change. In other words, like,
mm.
for example, and this relates to this free will thing, because as you guys may have read with Harris's book Free Will, he presented the fact that in 1978 the Supreme Court ruled that free will is the law of the land. So you can't even say in a court, it's illegal to say in the court, well, I don't have a free will. Even though
Well,
that's like,
we're in deep trouble then.
yeah.
If we ever go to
Yep.
court, we're in trouble.
Yeah, but when it comes to court systems, people do have like I do see why they bring free will into it sometimes. I mean, they want to keep criminals off the street for as long as possible, in order to keep people safe. I do get that. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
but that's not. I mean, Jamie, if you know the Scandinavian systems, they don't do that. The Scandinavian systems are very compassionate, and then the people who go to prison and jail in those societies, they don't go back to crime because, like, our criminal justice systems
Their
just
rehabilitation system is a lot better than ours
exactly.
oh
here.
yeah, yeah. If you can reprogram criminals into not reoffending, then okay. I mean, you've got um you've got a logical case to freedom, I suppose. But with psychopaths, it's very hard to change that type of mindset.
That's true, but like, it's interesting with psychopaths, the moral and compassionate and right thing to do is fine. You have to separate them, right? But as long as they're separated, and considering that they're not reformable for whatever reason, then it's just wrong to punish them beyond that separation.
I see what you mean. You shouldn't
Again,
punish people
you need
what's
punishment
necessary.
to a certain extent as a deterrent.
Yeah.
But to punish someone, because punishment is supposed to be about reforming someone. It's supposed to be about helping a person see the error of their ways.
Yeah, unlike us, where we just throw them in prison and
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I know this doesn't have any relevance at all, but in comic stories, sometimes you will see notions of forgiveness. Like, in the cartoons, do you watch WSD, like of Batman and stuff like that, animated series?
yeah,
Well, sometimes you have notions of people changing, don't you? Like not being criminals anymore.
yeah. Like for one example, well, this is not Batman, but you ever heard Static Shock, the Rubber Band Man? He was started off as a villain, but he became a hero at the end. Yeah,
Yeah. Some fictional characters do that. They used to be criminals and then they start doing you know positive things for people. They stop doing um, things that are erroneous to society. Well, if you can change criminals in our criminal justice systems in real life, George, that'd be great, right? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even like, for example, there's mood drugs, there's pills, antidepressant pills. If a person's depressed, not feeling all that great, they'll take some kind of pill and they'll feel better. They'll elevate their mood. I mean, we should be working on some kind of a conscience pill that helps people, you know, be more moral, that helps people just like strengthen their conscience.
Hmm.
Sounds like a good idea.
Right. Anyone else want to say anything?
I can't think of anything. Now,
nah.
I think,
Everything I have to say is usually off topic. You said don't go off topic.
yeah. Now, I think we have Trick on the call because I think Jamie added him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was just
yeah. I
listening
think
in.
I
I
saw
went
him
off topic
before.
a couple of times. Sorry about that.
I wasn't sure what you guys like, what topics of this podcast was and everything, so I was just kind of listening in.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, because Jamie wanted to talk about how libertarianism is a messed up philosophy and it involves blaming people. And it is, I agree with Jamie, it is closely related to free will belief, even though libertarianism and philosophy is not the same as the political philosophy, they do seem related.
Yeah, I think the free will belief is kind of a requirement for libertarianism. I think the whole notion of that one person is more deserving than another person, or less deserving, either way, um,
And
is kind of a staple for libertarian thought, especially like the free market type of libertarian, where they think that people actually deserve more than other people depending on what they do. So,
or they're actually choosing to be poor based on the jobs that
right.
they.
Well, that's what I mean. Like somebody that gets to where they're at,
Mm.
deserves it over somebody that doesn't, because that other person didn't do what that other, the one person did. So,
Yeah, and libertarians tend to use any excuse they can to get in the state out of, involvement of dealing with poverty, because I'm sorry to say this, but without safety nets like universal basic income, how the hell are you gonna eradicate poverty? You know, how are you gonna do it? I just don't see how,
here's the answer. You're not.
unless you go to resource-based economy with Venus Project, which is unlikely. You know, I
And
mean,
guys, here's a thought. People think that people are wealthy because they deserve it. Like they think that when they're rich, it's because they got rewarded for their hard
Ah,
work. But here's the
yeah,
way of
Trump
looking
worked
at
that
it.
hard.
But
Yeah,
here's the
Trump worked
problem.
that hard.
Two people could do the exact same hard work, even in the same type of field, and one can still be paid more than the other based on how much other people want to pay him or not. It's completely not up to the person. Even the whole free will debate aside, it's still not up to you how much other people are willing to pay you. Like if you're a sports person, let's say that something happens where people all turn into Chandler Klebs where they don't care about sports. Then all the people who used to be wealthy and used to make money off of sports, well, they go into poverty because nobody watches sports anymore. So you see how your economic situation is in no way up to you. Even if we did have a free will, which is incoherent, but we still can't control what other people do, which is why I think this whole idea of people, people, the idea that people are even rewarded for their hard work is kind of a myth, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, and then when
Yep.
you get into like extreme wealth, like people that are, millionaires or even billionaires, that there's no amount of work that somebody can do that would make them more deserving of that extreme wealth. Like somebody, that worked as a janitor really hard all their life and made minimum wage or maybe a little more than minimum wage. Um, they worked hard their entire life, right? But so there's no amount of work that somebody could have done to say that they are more deserving of being like a millionaire or a billionaire or something like that at the expense of other people,
You know,
basically.
and you're right. So I think as the world gets to understand that we don't have a free will, not only will we have minimum wages, we'll probably have maximum wages.
Right.
Because
That's
yeah,
the thing. I think there should be a maximum wage. There should be a basically a cutoff point where we say, okay, this is excessive wealth, and as soon as somebody gets to that excessive wealth, that money should be distributed, you know, down to the lower brackets, basically. So
Well, I suggested that the maximum wage should be something like this. Like, if someone's making more than 100,000 a year, then they should be in the tax bracket of 50%. 50% of what they earn over 100K a year should go to public funds and research. Yeah.
Yeah.
in
right.
the late 50s under Eisenhower, the top federal tax rate was 92%. It
Yeah,
was
I
a
remember that.
yeah, it was a disincentive for people to like just, try to become so rich. I mean, like, and that, that was a much fairer society back then, at least that, economically, that there wasn't a great disparity between the rich and everyone else.
Hey, here's an idea. Here's a really good disincentive for trying to accumulate billions of dollars. The fact that you're going to die someday and it won't do you any good. That's a good disincentive.
Or how about this, right? If we had a solar flare, George Ortega, right, and the EMP wiped out our grid, our computer systems, our banks, right, all your money will be gone. So um, people would start to panic about that for obvious reasons. But as long as you had the resources, the technical personnel, the farms, and the factories, um, you would be okay. It will be a struggle, but you would be able to get things back, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, like whether it's a solar flare, I mean, climate change
Mm.
threatens, the fabric of civilization greatly, and yeah, that's why this discussion on libertarianism is important because these people who just want no regulation or as little regulation as possible, it's an immoral stance. It's like basically allowing things that are immoral to go unpunished.
Yeah, but you see my point, George. I mean, this whole money thing, it's a notion. It's made up. It's just numbers in a bank. Uh,
Oh yeah, to to
yeah,
to really understand it, like if you look at extreme wealth or basically hoarding money, when people do that, what it does actually is it depreciates the dollar. It makes everybody else at the lower levels have less money than they normally would because the actual worth of the dollar bill is isn't as much anymore because of the hoarding of the money. So it's just kind of a depreciation that happens when we allow this type of inequality to take place.
And all this borrowing and lending and stuff that's getting nations in, perpetual debt that they can't get out of. This this is just showing the problems that money is just causing. And this is the other reason me and WSD and Chandler support the Venus Project, is because if you get rid of money, you wouldn't have to worry about debt and all that trivial stuff,
Mhm.
Right. So
Yeah.
there's some hoops to jump through on that one, but yeah, I agree. I mean, a resource-based economy would be great.
Yeah, because and money just causes too many problems. It incentivizes people to do good as well as bad. You see what I mean?
Yeah, what's
Yeah.
interesting is like I tend to think that there's a lot of things that people would not want to do if they weren't making money off of it. It's weird because people can be motivated to do things like take for example all the people that do go into prostitution
Hmm.
uh, that would not be doing it if they didn't need the money. So you see how people's behavior is controlled by this fictional thing called money, and yet people are still claiming that their choice is their own and they have free will, when it's clear just follow the money. And it's really not even the money, but it's the resources that we need. And so I see what an illusion freedom is.
Yeah, I mean, freedom in a literal sense doesn't really exist because you're always restrained by your biology and your environment. It doesn't matter what political philosophy you have. You still have to deal with the fact that you're made of atoms, and if you have the wrong chemicals put into you, you're still going to be poisoned.
Now, in regards to beliefs, I do think that like libertarians, they tend to believe some of the stuff that I mean, I don't think they're necessarily lying,
Mm.
especially like on global warming and things like that. I think that they actually believe these bad ideas, and it's just they're 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 convinced basically of these bad ideas is what's happening.
And
At least a lot of them anyway. I'm sure some of them are lying as well, but
yeah, they're also convinced that carbon tax is a way of dictating them, so to speak. I mean, I've seen some stuff about that being posted on Twitter. They claim that carbon tax is just a way for um, governments to
yeah.
steal off people, but really what they're trying to do is disincentivize um, carbon fuel emissions.
Right. And a lot of times people's beliefs just kind of align with whatever's most convenient for them. So if for the libertarian, it's convenient to not have to worry about global warming or things like that, or it's convenient to them to, you know, say to not be taxed, for example. They don't like to be taxed, so that's convenient for them.
Yeah, but
Yeah, it
fairly,
becomes about
fairly
what's
see,
convenient for them individually without
Right.
consideration of what's convenient for everyone as a whole.
but
Exactly.
what
So
liber-
so it's just this selfish thinking
yeah.
that type of mentality that
Yeah, but what libertarians fail to understand is that taxes are necessary to run a society in our current economy. Without taxation, you can't have, prisons unless you have private prisons. But how would a free market run prison be any more effective than?
Right. Well, they believe that they have the answer to that, and that they have all these really bad thinking. I mean, you can just look at that Stefan Molyneux guy, and the tons of followers he has that just kind of buy into the trash that he's spewing, basically. So
Yeah, I mean, how is trusting corporations more than government going to help? I mean, corporations were the ones who contributed to this. They're the ones who caused this climate change problem in the first place. So how can we trust them more than politicians? Yeah.
Well, and here's an interesting point to look at it is I don't look at it as corporations versus government because I view the government as a corporation in a sense. I don't, it's
No,
still a group of
no,
people.
Chandler, no. Right. Corporations, the history of corporations is like the reason corporations were established was to protect individuals from personal liability. In other words, if you owned a company and you got sued, that means that you'd be able to keep your house and your property without, risk of it being taken away. But in exchange for this protection, corporations were supposed to be basically formed for the public good. That the rationale for the corporation was they had to, like, their practices had to be for the public good. So in other words, like, corporations like Coca-Cola, and so many corporations that are just like really against people's interests, they wouldn't be able to survive. So the difference between corporations and the government, Chandler, is that the government are the people. That's the thing. I mean, like, money corrupts government. With people injecting more and more money into politics, the rich have pretty much co-opted our government. But government, the way it's supposed to be, the way we're working to make it, is it's the exact opposite of a corporation. Because the corporation, the way it stands today, is in business for the benefit of its shareholders, and its shareholders are a very, very small percentage of the entire population. Whereas the government is in, it's not even a business, because it's like a democracy. It's basically an institution, to further the welfare of everyone, and ideally not benefiting one group over another.
And yet, but here's the deal, George. Governments always do benefit certain groups over others because.
But Chandler, I know, but that's why, what I said before is the reason these governments do that is because, like, money has corrupted the system. If money wasn't allowed in politics, like Sanders says, if you take the money out of the politics, then that corruption goes with it. That's what's corrupting our political systems.
Yeah, because right now you have companies that are kind of controlling a big portion of the government because of the money that they're able to put into basically lobbying what they want. So it's all about lobbying for what you want for. But if you have, the more money you have, the more people you could put on that lobbying, the more capacity you have to change the way you want things to change in government. So that's kind of a problem because corporations are kind of controlling government because of the money that they're able to inject.
And with that power, they, for example, allow news organizations like Fox News, to lie to the public, to mislead the public in favor of the rich.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, now, although I want to go back to what Trick said about people, they may sincerely believe that what they're actually saying. And this is the tricky part, once again, is how do we separate those who genuinely believe something false and those who are no better but are lying?
But Chandler, right? Whether they believe what they're saying or not is beside the point. The fact is, the end result matters, and the end result is liars, especially when it comes to pseudoscience, is causing the problems that we have today. Yeah.
Yeah, see that I agree. The problem is it's still a lie even if the person isn't lying because it's false. That's the tricky part.
Yeah.
Right, Chandler, like somebody might genuinely believe that cigarettes are safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that still doesn't give them license to market a cigarette without that warning about the dangers. So, like, whether it's ignorance or stupidity or malice, deceit, we still have to protect against it.
Exactly. It doesn't matter whether it's forgetfulness or people just are generally covering up something. The fact is, if they're saying that climate change isn't happening when it is, because we pump more methane and nitrous oxide, I think it is, these greenhouse gases, the more heat that's going to get trapped. And
carbon dioxide.
yeah, the more heat that's going to get trapped, and we're going to lose our polar ice caps, which means a lot of species are going to pass away, and it's going to affect our food chain. So
yeah. To put this another way, that there's facts and then there's non-facts. People have a right to their own opinion, but they don't have a right to their own facts. And especially when it comes to things like global warming, we have the facts. When it comes to economics, it's a little more difficult because there's so many different economic theories and things get skewed in one direction or another depending on the economic theory. So Obviously, we kind of have an idea of what's the best economic theory, and then libertarians have their ideas of what the best economic theory is, and one of them is wrong and one of them is right, but they, I think they probably both think their ideas are correct.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people supported Milton Friedman, but the fact is, his philosophy and his thinking on economics has not helped the poor. If it did, if his ideas really could help the poor, then why is it that there are still slums? So
Yeah, and here's an interesting idea, guys. Like, a good example of a completely unregulated system that's complete chaos is churches. Think about it. Like, they're not taxed, and they're each teaching different beliefs to people about the afterlife. They're each teaching different religions. They're teaching different Bible verses being true, others as false. They each have different beliefs about God, and so there clearly we have a problem where there is no regulation, there are no standards or laws that actually apply to religion. Anything can happen within those walls of a church, and the government doesn't interfere, as far as I know. And that is why it's so messed up, partly. But part of it is, of course, because people don't have any actual standard for truth.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same thing with Donald Trump voters. They don't have a standard for um, scientific method. If they knew the scientific method, they'll investigate climate change rather than just assuming climate change is a hoax just because Donald Trump claimed it was a
They
hoax.
researched everything and understood it. Trump wouldn't have gotten nearly as far as he did.
Yeah, exactly. It's insane the amount of people that voted for him. It's like they have no clue. They just have no clue of reality. It's just, oh my days, man. It frustrates me when I see him at amount of votes there are.
Well,
Ugh.
again, that's why this election is so important. I mean, like Hillary, I mean, again, like you get money out of politics. The rich no longer are able to like stop us from addressing climate change. They're no longer able to stop us from creating a fairer, more equitable distribution of resources. I mean, Trick, I don't know if you were here before, but like what I was saying is that the rich as a group are far more dangerous to this civilization and the future civilizations than every terrorist organization combined, even the history of terrorist organizations. That's how,
Especially the oil company.
and I'm not saying that the rich don't also do some good, but when you have a group of people that are so dangerous, you have to stop them. And like this election is about starting the process. I mean, like, and we just have to hope that Hillary is not is not also so corrupt. We have to hope that she's genuinely you know eager to get this money out of politics. Because again, what Sanders said, you know, getting money out of the politics is the holy grail. Without it, you can't do anything. Once you do it, you can do pretty much everything that we need to do.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be like something that Hillary is going to be concerned with. I have a feeling anyway. I think
Well, I mean,
Sanders would have, but Hillary,
no,
I'm not so sure.
well, you got to understand, Trick, that basically because the Republicans, both have so many senators, where they can filibuster, unless the Democrats end the filibuster, but especially also because they have, they're going to continue to control the House, that Hillary's not going to be able to do anything about it directly.
Hmm.
But she if Obama like gets to his Garland through the Supreme Court, they can each of them place a judge on the Supreme Court that can do it, that can reverse Citizens United and reverse all these regulations instituted by Scalia and these conservatives to serve the
Hmm.
rich. So
Yeah.
it's an indirect approach, but you need a president that's committed to doing that.
Yeah, but you also need to tell people who vote for these politicians that they need to understand what the scientific method is about, investigation, you know, and verifying science exists based on what nature tells us. It's like Donald Trump voters just assume that this whole climate change this whole man-made climate change thing. They think it's a conspiracy to make the governments make more money, right?
Oh yeah, the Trump's blaming it on the Chinese.
Yeah, I saw that tweet on Twitter.
I still don't understand how you came up with that.
They just, yeah, Donald Trump voters are so stupid, man. So freaking dumb. Excuse the swearing there, but you know.
Well, and then from our perspective, whatever is controlling the show, you got to wonder why people are made so stupid and so evil. Whether it's
Media,
evolution, whatever.
what's on TV, social media, the works.
Here's a thought, guys. Do you think that we lived in a time like before television and radio, like before there were like these things people just zone out and listen to that brainwashes them in a certain way, that people might have been smarter back then?
Nah, because like think about it. Back then there was like segregation and slavery, and before that, like the Indians and all. No, people have been like evil and stupid for God.
Yeah, so we can't really attribute it to just like this modern media stuff because there's been ancient stupidity as well.
Yeah, and like I said, if thanks to the internet, I wouldn't have the knowledge I have. Trust me, I probably still been religious without the internet.
Well, yeah, it's probably more good than bad, especially the internet.
Yeah.
And we would not have known about each other if it weren't for the internet. So.
Yeah, that's the best point ever. I wouldn't be able to talk to you guys in different countries and weird stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, like George said, we've had like the Inquisition, we had World War One, World War Two, we had the communist regime in Russia. It's just.
Well, that's why I feel positive about the future, because I think right now we're just in the very beginning of the information age, where the internet, is just taking hold and everything. And I think that with that information, people, won't be prevented from getting the information they need, to progress in the future. So.
Yeah, but we need to tell people who vote for politicians they need to inform themselves before they put a vote for someone. Put in a vote for someone. Because if you vote for someone without thinking, if you don't think it through properly, you could be voting for a future dictator for all you know. I mean, Donald Trump even said that he's going to kill ISIS family members, right? Not ISIS, not the ISIS criminals themselves, but their family members, because he claimed that they care about their families and stuff like that. You heard him, George, right? And John Oliver exposed him for this.
Yeah, no, Trump he's dangerous. He's just like really scary.
Yeah, it's really scary. I mean, it's not even funny anymore.
No, it isn't. I don't know what he's gonna do in Mexico, because they say they was gonna build that effing wall. Y'all know you don't want me to curse, so I'm just effing. But yeah.
And I'm worried.
And now what? That's what I'm saying. Now what? And they say no.
And I'm worrying for those civilians in the Middle East, WSD, because I mean the Bush administration has already resulted in casualties, isn't it, George?
Yep.
Yeah, we gotta, again, this election is extremely important. The Supreme Court is extremely important, and there's redistricting. I mean, right now the Republicans hold the vast majority of congressional seats in the House because they gerrymandered, all these districts, without any regard for fairness and so like. We have to reverse that by 2020. We've got to reverse these campaign finance laws. Only then will we be able to get all this stuff done and protect ourselves from people like Trump who are just so dangerous to everyone.
Yeah. When it comes, I mean, I do agree with certain penalties for spreading misinformation, pseudoscience. But at the same time, we want to be careful and not punish people for misdemeanors, small things. And this is where the right to be forgotten comes in as well. When you rehabilitate people for petty stuff like theft or whatnot.
Yeah, and Trick, I don't know if you were here for this also. It's like the idea that we have to have proportional penalties in criminal justice. In other words, like these corporations, like Trump's corporations, they they break the law, and let's say they're fined $50,000, right? You know,
Yeah.
$1 billion corporation, and that's like
50,000. That's it.
that's our, like an average person breaking the law being charged 50 cents. In other words, like, you know,
Right.
across the board, if a rich person, somebody who's worth 5 million speeds, their penalty should be 10,000, $50,000, you know, to be propensate, because, like, you know, these penalties are supposed to serve the deterrent. You can't
Right.
have, like, it has to be proportional to the income and wealth.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as long as we have such extreme wealth inequality, then we have to do something like that. Otherwise, it's just it's like, who cares if you get a ticket for something, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, guys, because think about it. Like, yeah, if somebody is if they speed all the time, let's say they're speeding all the time and they're charged some fine for it, but the fine's so minimal so that they speed every day when they're driving, but they never quit speeding because they don't consider it much of a penalty.
Until they cause an accident, then that's going to cost them.
Right, and unfortunately, it won't just cost them; it'll cost whoever else they crash into, and that's the
Yeah,
whole
pretty
thing.
much. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
you get a certain number of speeding tickets, and you also lose your license. But you know,
Yeah,
that's
that's
another
true.
deterrent.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a good idea there.
or in a,
Except when you have your CDL. If you get too many accidents with your CDL, you downgrade back to a C class.
or in,
But yeah,
or in the case of Justin Bieber, he should have ended up in prison because drink driving is just, especially illegal drag racing, while you're under the influence of alcohol. That's pretty severe, right, George? Because that can
yeah,
cause.
because I would be pretty mad if that was my child you ran into because you wanted to speed down the street, lose control, smash into something.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, well,
it could.
again,
Important, more likely.
corporations run every day knowing that they could pretty much do whatever they want because the penalties for what they do are so minimal. You know,
Right.
that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here's another thing, guys. Like, doesn't it seem that it's always other people who suffer more from somebody's stupid actions than the person themselves?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons.
I've been saying that.
That's one of the reasons why I brought up Bieber because his stupidity has affected other people, like when he's spouting his fans. Yeah, people rip on him for less serious stuff though, like his music. I mean, I'm not a fan of his music or anything, but I don't think that's a reason to hate him. I think, um, the other stuff that he did was a lot more
Yeah,
serious.
it's his actions that makes him an asshole.
Yeah,
Uh,
his actions,
my bad.
his actions towards fans and endangering the public. Those are the things that people should be worried about, not trivial stuff like his, content that he's been putting out. You know.
Though I'm not so sure that prison is the way to go for him. Like I think a better solution is just to take away his license. And if obviously he drives without a license, then yeah, you put him in prison for that. But
Yeah.
Oh,
Even though I know
I
some
mean, taking
people
away his
in the
license, he
ghetto
wouldn't drive.
that drives while driving license. Trust me, I know.
Yeah, if you took away his license, then he wouldn't be able to do it again. Obviously, I mean that would be enough. You have a good point there, Trick.
yeah, it's all about taking away the ability to cause the harm. And right, obviously, if he still drives without the without a license, then you have to imprison him because then he's
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
and I
don't.
think, guys, that this all goes back to a basic misunderstanding that people have of why we even have rules, why there's punishments or penalties or whatever for things, because a lot of people do think it's based on deserve, and we know that's not it at all. But it's just to stop the harm from happening.
Yeah, there's been studies actually regarding uh, the more free will belief people have, the higher their ideas about retribution or retributionism or vengeance is basically. So and then the less free will belief you have, the less retributive tendencies you have, and the more though you don't lose those consequential ones, the ones that are cared about. When you care about deterrence and things like that, those are still consequential, but
And
the ideas
self-defense.
about retribution get lost basically. So
Yeah, but you still need the right to self-defense because that will
right,
always
well
remain.
that's consequential, right? So that's
Yeah,
different.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like for
Yep.
example, like here's the thing, guys. Like you know how I am, how like I'm so non-violent. But here's the way I look at it is if there was a self-defense situation, I only need to cause enough pain to somebody to stop them from hurting me so that I can escape. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, people go with this retributivism, they go far beyond that, where they continually want to punish that person forever.
Right.
Yo,
Well,
well, yeah,
it's
I understand that, but just it been times like this, like the kid punched me in the back on head for no reason. I wanted to pull out a knife and stab him. Then the
Right.
people yelling like, "Yeah!" I was
Because
watching. I
people are
wanted to put.
emotional creatures, is what it is. So
Yeah, the
so
way
you
I
can.
see it is, you don't put your hands on somebody. You don't fuck with somebody. Sorry, excuse my slang. You don't mess with somebody. As long as you don't mess with them, they should they shouldn't mess with you.
Well,
You put
let's
your
put it
hands
this
on
way.
somebody.
Let's put it this way, WSD. Imagine that somebody messed with you in that way, but you could be
You
assured that
don't
they
punch
wouldn't.
somebody in the back. You don't punch in the face, especially from behind.
Okay, let's imagine that somebody did that to you. You know, somebody smacked you in the head or something from behind. Now imagine that you have two options. You have the option to smack them back, or you have the option to turn a switch and then it'll just prevent them from ever doing that again. What's the better option?
No, smacking them back, they will hit me. They'll turn it into a fight. So yeah, I would tear the switchblade and mobilize them.
Why wouldn't you turn the switch to make them to prevent them from doing it again?
That's so they don't get up and try it again.
No, but see, you're missing the point. The point is the reason you might want to do something is because you don't want them to be able to do this and get away with it, right?
Yep.
But if they can't do it again, then they can't get
And
away with it.
it deter the other even deter the other people from even trying it.
Okay, so you're saying
Hold
for
on, I'll be back.
deterrence.
Hold on, I'll be back.
Yeah, but Trick is right. People are emotional creatures, and they don't
Right.
really think about these things in depth before reacting.
Oh, just you just look at the movies that people watch. I mean, the the movies that people love the most are the movies that somebody gets hurt and
Sorry about that.
then
Sorry about
somebody
that.
comes in and gets revenge on the
Sorry
for
about
hurting.
that. Somebody knocked on my door. Who just left?
I know I'm trying to call Poffo because he
Oh,
sent me a message on Facebook.
I understand that, but like I said, it's like I said, you don't. Like I said, if you don't I don't put my hands on you. You shouldn't put your hands on me.
But here's the
That's the
thing.
way I see it.
But here's the thing, Trick Slattery. We don't really have a way to reprogram criminals' brains yet,
Yeah.
and it has been suggested in one documentary that one day they'll be able to put a microchip in the psychopath's brain, for example, and then change it, modify their behavior by doing
Right.
that. But until this technology comes about where we can actually reprogram a criminal's brain, we need to modify their conduct by using the criminal justice system. You see what I mean?
Which would be
Yeah.
more like incarceration, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Of course.
Yeah.
But that's more like a quarantine model. So if somebody catches a contagious disease, you don't blame them for catching that contagious disease, but you'll still put them in quarantine because they're a danger to other people, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the quarantine example is a perfect example because if someone has an illness, you don't want other people to get illnesses, but at the same time, you don't want to blame the person that has that illness because they didn't choose to, catch that for whatever reason they did. Yeah.
Yeah, and I look at everything in that way. All the evil is really just as some disease.
Yeah. And sorry the way I snapped earlier. Just like I said, you don't put your hands. The way I see it is, you don't put your hands on somebody.
Yeah.
And like I said, you punch me back in the head. You don't know who I was.
Yeah.
I could be a crazy psychopath. Then you've been in trouble. Then yeah.
Well, you have to educate people to reduce their likelihood of reoffending. I mean, you have to tell people that look, one day, sooner or later, you're going to run into the wrong person, and then
Yep.
you're going to do them an injustice. And when that happens, they're going to want, they're going to want payback. So they,
Yeah, trust me, this gonna be one of those dudes that they ain't gonna give it.
Yeah, but that doesn't.
I'm gonna
That a
swear
lot of
again.
times,
Sorry, they ain't
a
gonna
lot of
give a
times
crap.
a lot of times that type of fighting back, like you say, it doesn't really do the trick. It doesn't. Take gangs for example. One gang will kill another gang's, a member of another gang. Then they'll, retaliate and kill a member of the other gang. And
Yeah,
so
I
it'll just go
understand. I
back and
understand.
forth,
I see
back and
what you're.
forth, and it just causes a bigger
Yeah, it causes
problem
the
in the long
violence
run.
to escalate.
Yeah.
Basically,
yeah,
I understand. This is like I say, but at that time, I was just feeling,
yeah. But
that was emotion. Yeah.
a lot of the reason why assassinations happen or wars happen is largely to do with, corruption and greed, and it's a lot of it's to do with money. And Jack Fresco said that if you took no profit out of war, then wars would stop happening.
Right.
Yeah, and there's one thing though. Now, while it's true that if the economic reward for war were gone, then that would reduce war. But I think a lot of it just does come back to people and their belief in revenge, because their belief that people deserve to suffer for what they have done to them. So there may still be war that results from the free will belief alone.
Yeah,
Yeah, but Chandler, like the wars today are really not they're not started by people. In other words, our politicians might use revenge to get the population to support them with these wars, but to a great extent it's about the corporate interests. It's about, one country, the rich people in one country are afraid of the rich people in another country taking some of their wealth. So much of it is not, it's not personal, it's economic.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because if you run out of oil in one country and another country has oil, and um, your corporations want it that badly, they'll do whatever they can to
Wherever it
have
takes to get it.
yeah, they'll do whatever they can to have access to that oil. And if it means war, then that's exactly what they'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Let's see. We've been going for an hour and a half about. Did everyone say
Actually,
what
I
they
see
wanted to
6 hours.
say? What?
Jesus, 6 6 hours.
No,
Oh
no,
yeah, that's me. That's between me and Jamie. Yeah.
no. Oh, yeah. Well, for me, it's just been an hour and a half, but I guess you guys have been on longer. Yeah.
um, I mean, I've been less attracted to this revenge idea ever since I learned about nature and nurture. I do believe that people's behavior is shaped by, culture and that type of stuff. Yeah, and this is what we need to tell people, because behavior doesn't come out in a vacuum. All behavior is learned. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
from our experiences.
Yep.
Yeah, you just got to understand that the revenge idea is just an overly emotional idea. It's not really a rational one.
Mm.
No, I know. Like I said, I know I got a little bit of passion earlier, but just the way, yeah.
It is
It's just like
frustrating.
it's just when I see it, it frustrates me. I'm like, you
Oh
you,
yeah,
you don't
yeah.
go around punching people in the face.
It's human nature, right?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody
Like they said,
wouldn't feel the same way, but
subconsciously, you go out there punching people in the face while you want to play the damn knockout game. Okay, wherever you get, you should get.
No one wants to suffer.
Stupid ass games, stupid ass prizes. Excuse my slang again.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no one wants to suffer. That's a given, unless they actually believe that they deserve to suffer. But that's a different, I mean, that's a whole different topic altogether, right? Yeah, the free will blame type stuff. Because people get depressed, George, because they feel like they've done something wrong sometimes, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, look, without free will belief, there would be no logical reason for either blame or guilt.
Mm. And it's also, depression has also been, um, it's known in the scientific community as a mental illness now, which is that's progress. I mean, it is a mental illness in a way. It's like phobia, isn't it? You don't choose it, but it's a terrible thing to have.
I think eventually in the future, anger, sadness, fear are all going to be considered mental diseases. Because, there's the emotional components of them, the negativity
You gotta
are
look into.
irrational.
I feel like you gotta look into the reason why causes, because anger, happiness, and emotions that is caused by something.
Yeah, obviously it's caused by something, but the point is negative emotions would be recognized as mental illnesses in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta realize. You look into. If you don't look into what caused it, you gonna still have the problem.
Yeah, because even now, like, for example, like, fear is considered illness when it reaches the level of anxiety and great fear. The same with anger, like
Yeah,
when
or
it,
phobia.
and right, and then the same with depression. In other words, like, there's a lot, sadness, if it turns into depression, that's considered illness. Yeah, I think maybe 50, 100 years from now, if a person starts becoming sad or angry or afraid, they're going to say, all right, that's an illness, and they'll pop a pill and, be well.
Yeah,
Yep.
people have phobias to different things, and I also wrote a. Did you read my book, Fairy Tales That Deceive Many, George?
No, I haven't. I'm obsessed with politics now. I've been phone banking for Hillary at the campaign headquarters here.
Oh,
I'm,
sorry.
I'm making
That's,
making hundreds of calls.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah. And
yeah, I
speaking
think
about your thing with phobia, I had this little, but I was out, on my school bus. This is one kid that refused to get on the bus, and it, I mean, he screams in terror to get on this bus. So I don't know what it is. I think that may be a phobia, but he doesn't want to get on that bus for some reason.
Well, people have psychological, like I know I do. Like for example, if I see worms outside, I get grossed out and I'm unable to eat for like an hour after. I have it's a totally irrational condition, right? But it's still there, right? So I'll get grossed out and I won't be able to eat because of my psychological state at that point.
Yeah.
So people have irrational psychological states that come about, that it's really hard to control these things.
Yeah, and that's one example to prove that we don't have free will, because why choose to have a phobia? Like I've written in my book, Trick Slattery, if you read it. Uh,
I read half of it actually. I got to read the other half, but it's pretty good. It's like telling your story, so it's interesting.
yeah, and I can put the link to that in the description of this podcast too, because I read Jamie Soden's book and wrote about it on my blog too, and yeah, it's a pretty short one too, like 16
yeah,
pages.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's still pretty good. I explained why phobias are. Um, they won't necessarily be in situations where we'll die or be permanently injured, but at the same time, these phobias. How can I explain it? It's complicated, isn't it, Trick? It's you're afraid
Yeah,
of
I mean,
something.
phobias are irrational. We know this. Like, you're afraid of spiders, even if they're not venomous spiders, just because you have a phobia, right?
Yep.
So it's not something. It's purposely not rational. That's the whole point about phobias, is they aren't really rational.
Yeah,
So
Nope.
same thing with other psychological states, and
yeah,
like
Yeah,
sadness, for
just like
example, or well, sadness I think is a little more rational, especially when there's something to be sad about, such as the harm that we see in the world or things like that. But maybe once we solve those problems, if we do, then it would be irrational to be
but
sad. So
but like I mentioned, phobias debunk free will by itself, because why would you choose to be afraid of something that wouldn't necessarily kill you? Like I've got a fear of vomiting. Like if I see someone like throw up, I get grossed out and I turn away. I'll turn my head away. If I see it in a movie, or if I see it on TV, or if I see it in real life, I get really grossed out about it. I can't explain it. It's not saying, like you said, Trickster. It's not like a rational thing, because it wouldn't. It's not going to kill you unless you get an infection from it, of course.
yeah, it's not really phobias in general that take away free will, but just psychology in general. People's ideas and everything is filtered through our psychology.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah. Thanks for reading my book. I'll have to get around to reading yours sometime. I purchased your book off Amazon, didn't I, Trick? So I'll get around to reading it eventually.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, you're halfway through the book I wrote already online, and like I said, I made it open source, so everyone.
Yeah, I put it on my tablet, and I started reading it there. So
Yeah.
I just didn't get very far. I only got about halfway through, but it's short enough, so I'll kick the other half out.
Yeah. I also mentioned like scientific facts in there as well, like how batteries are made, how turbines are made, and stuff like that. Basically, a turbine-based generator is really a reverse motor, right? And
Yes.
a coil of copper wire around a magnet. You know, it's basic engineering, right?
So we're kind of going off off of the topic, which was libertarianism. Should we kind of close out the libertarianism podcast part, Chandler?
Yeah, because we've gone on long enough and we kind of strayed off topic, but it was all important stuff, so I'll leave it in, obviously. But yeah, so if everyone's had everything they want to say, then we can end tonight's podcast. So,
Sounds good.
all right. You've been listening to Free Will, Science, and Religion with Chandler Klebs, Jamie Soden, George Ortega, WSD, and
Yeah.
and Trick Slattery joined us later, and we were talking about libertarianism and some problems with money in politics, but we also talked heavily about the free will belief and retributivism and how all these important things that affect people's behavior. So we're hoping to make a better world and educate people about these things. So thank you for listening, and goodbye.
And stay safe.
Yeah, stay safe.